Welcome to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Awaken Heart Podcast, where we have another captivating episode here for you, and I'm here to guide you on this journey. And I think it's so cool. We've had so many episodes recently about harnessing the power that is within each and every one of us and really attuning our frequency and our vibration to really create the world that we want for ourselves. And in turn, it helps others create the worlds that they want as well, because when we raise our own vibration, the others can do the same. We show them that it is possible. And we want to show everybody that it's possible to really have these amazing lives and really create this, new earth and this heaven on earth, which is really available to each and every one of us. So today we are diving into the mystical realms of the Akashic Records, amongst other things. We talk a lot about channeling, what divine creatorship is, and how to access and harness these energies to create wealth, abundance, and prosperity. Today's guest, Jennifer Spor, is the CEO and founder of her namesake company and host of the Path of the Awakened Heart podcast. Another Awakened Heart podcast. She is the spiritual advisor, channel, and Akashic Records trauma-informed master consultant and teacher for high-achieving conscious women leaders. Jennifer guides women who are here to live unapologetically expressed in their truth and fulfill their highest destiny in this life, soul-led. How many of us are seeking that wisdom of our soul to live an aligned life through the soul and through the heart? Working with Jennifer is highly activating and deeply transformational. Her guidance as a spiritual advisor and clear channel in the Akashic Records, combined with her experience as an entrepreneur and corporate operations executive, as well as the wisdom she embodies from the lessons learned on her own journey, supports her clients to learn how to collapse space and time to create results so powerful it feels like years of work accomplished in a few sessions. Before we dive in today's enlightening and absolutely inspiring conversation, let me take a moment to express my gratitude to all of our listeners. Your support fuels the energy of this space, and together we are creating a community that embraces growth, positivity, and connection. So again, thank you so much. And without further ado, here is today's guest, Jennifer Spor. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here with you and to have this conversation today. We're going to have so much fun.
Yes, we're going to have so much fun. And it's a topic that I'm just so enthralled over. And I know I've had people on that have talked about this subject before, and it's so fascinating and it's so cool the way it affects all of us. And we all at some time have access to it at some point. And there's the Akashic Records, and there's spirituality, higher consciousness, changing timelines and such like that. So many people are becoming more aware of this type of thing. You're the host of the Path of the Awakened Heart podcast.
Yes.
So she has the Path of the Awakened Heart podcast. I have the Awakened Heart podcast. How cool is that? So
yeah,
we're going to
noticed that too. I was
yes.
like, #synchronicity.
Yes, exactly. So this conversation is going to be like tenfold, opening up and awakening your hearts to this conversation. So I gave a little bit of an intro about Jennifer, but let's hear from her about what led her to becoming a channel and a reader of the Akashic and helping others to remember who they are. It's not about learning certain things. It's about remembering. And Jennifer, can you give our audience a little bit of that background of yourself and what led you to doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely. I love that you say remembering because it's true. That's really what it is. And it's such a big question to, in an effort to make a very long story, like many years of a journey shorter, just essentially, and I know so many of your listeners can probably relate to this. I was living a different life years ago. I had a really successful career in corporate retail, and I essentially reached a place where I checked off all the boxes on the list that traditional society, tells all of us, right, of what it means to achieve success. I just got to this place where I was no longer feeling, challenged and excited about what I was doing anymore. And that's really when I like to say that the fog started to lift. I started thinking about feeling into, what was next. I didn't take action at that time because I had a fear of, I've been doing this career for so long. What will happen if I leave? Will I be able to make the salary that I was making at that point, And so I didn't take action initially. That being said, I was doing more, pursuing more and more like deeper exploration around bringing forward more of my spiritual gifts, taking classes and doing all kinds of other things like that on the side. When you mentioned, how did I become a channel? I've always been sensitive ever since I can remember. I just suppressed those gifts for so long. I was literally told as a child not to speak unless spoken to. So imagine what my journey has been, coming from that to having a corporate career to actually moving into this kind of work where I'm literally like, letting it all hang out. But basically, like, I didn't take action right away. Then the catalyst for me changing my life at that time was really about another year or two after that. My mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And at the time I was living in New Jersey and she was living in Idaho, and I was flying back and forth to help out with the family as much as I could. And there was a defining moment, a very defining moment, where one day I was sitting at her bed, her hospital bed in her home a few days before she transitioned. And there was a moment where it was a BlackBerry at the time, so I missed those actually, but a BlackBerry was blowing up from work. So there was this issue happening at
BlackBerry
work.
phone. I'm thinking the berry. I'm like, BlackBerry. I
No,
missed those.
the
Well, you can go to the grocery store.
I miss those keyboards. Anyways, so I digress, but to say that
Yeah.
I was at my mom's bedside, a few days before she died, and my phone started blowing up with some type of issue from work. And in that moment, I was looking at my phone, then I looked back at her and I said I was done. I'm not stuck in my life. I can take my power back and create whatever reality I want. And that was the beginning of the end of that life. Now, I didn't fly back home to New Jersey and quit my job the next day. What ended up happening, because I was an executive where I worked, it was a process where I ended up voluntarily stepping down from my role because I was given an ultimatum between, this is what we require of you to stay in this career. And then I had what my heart was calling me to do, what my soul was calling me to do. And I had to choose. And I chose to follow my soul's guidance. So it was interesting because so that was a process. When that did eventually happen, it's a lot like a country song. I rented my house out in New Jersey, packed up my car and headed out west, drove out to Idaho by myself. I did not know that I was going to start a business at the time and do this work. It was really my own journey of spiritual awakening and all that unfolding that led me to this, because through that process of finding me, of remembering, essentially who I really am, I realized that, I had reached out for support for psychic readings, therapists, coaches, and all the things. But what I was hard pressed to find at that time was someone who could actually support me in the integration and bringing all of that together, and taking all of who I was becoming and manifesting that into my physical reality, you know, realigning my relationships, figuring out what I wanted to do, you know, with my life purpose. And that was it. That's what inspired me to do this work. And I've been doing it now for several years. And you know, finding your purpose isn't the destination. And something that I like to say often too is that when it comes to freedom and living free, there's the initial liberating ourselves, and then there's navigating that freedom. So navigating that freedom has been the journey, and our purpose and what our soul's calling us to do evolves, you know, as time goes on as well. So my work with people has evolved a bit too, but the core of what my mission has always been to teach people to support other conscious women in truly living from their inner knowing and truly living a soul-led life. And it's true freedom. It's true freedom.
That's beautiful. I'm so passionate about that myself. And yeah, that's what it's about. So I talk a lot about in this podcast, and a lot of my guests do as well, exactly what you're talking about, how something was missing, you weren't feeling fulfilled in your life. And there's this moment, like there's such a moment, and you can usually recall it years later, that one moment where it's like, okay, yeah, this doesn't work anymore, you know, or I'm going to be okay, and choosing something different. And literally from that moment, like the doorways start opening up. Like if you're open to it, it opens up, things start changing, you know, clients either show up or people show up in your life to help guide you. Money might start flowing in. So you had that moment. So that moment, it was in your hospital when you were with your mother. So what was that moment like? It was just an aha, calmness, a clarity, or what was that defining moment?
So what had happened was, you know, when my phone started blowing up and I looked at it, you know, I was sitting at her bedside. I looked over at my phone and, okay, what's going on? I had a job where I was in a high level leadership role in store operations. And so I was on all the time in my career, basically. So I looked to see what it was. And at that time, this particular issue, it was something that caused a lot of problems, but it could have been prevented. So I was looking at literally, am I to be present to this right now? Or am I to be present knowing that this is probably the last time I'm going to see her?
Yeah.
And that was what brought me to that decision.
Okay. So it was that physical moment, of course, but internally, what it was inside, it was a choice, this or this. No, it's this. And then
I
that
had been
shifted
afraid
everything.
to take action. I
Right.
already
Okay.
knew that I needed to change, and I had been afraid to take action, but that was the moment. That was the catalyst. That was when I finally went, I'm done. My courage exceeded my fear, because it's not that I wasn't still afraid to move forward. It was that I pretty much chose me. I decided that being in integrity with who I really was and living my life in alignment with that was more important than the alternative at that point. And I had no idea what was going to happen, you know, beyond that moment. I just knew. I just had a grounded knowing. I just knew.
And that is such an important thing you said. I chose me, choose me first. And that's not coming from a selfish place, not coming from an egoic place. It's coming from like, this is what I need. I above the self. This is what I need. This is like aligned. And so many people are afraid to take that step, choosing ourselves, because we're taught to give in spite of ourselves throughout our whole life. The shoulds, this is what I should be doing. This is what others need from me. And a lot of women are putting themselves last. So I think a lot of women are coming into this type of empowerment, listening to their soul's calling and choosing that. And, you know, you're laying the groundwork for so many other women to do the same thing, because we are so powerful as women we're creator beings. I mean, we hold life in our wombs and, we create life
Yes,
and
that's who we are.
mhm, mhm.
Yes.
We're portals to other dimensions. And
Yes.
there's literally an attack going on again. It's almost like the witch trials. And then like when we couldn't even vote and all this and what they're going like with all these, not even being able to define people can't even define ourselves as women anymore. They're like trying to take that away from it. It's not going to work because there's people like me that are shouting from the hilltops that that's not going to work. So you were led, and then you found a way to integrate all this, and now you're helping women do the same. Now you had mentioned that you were a way shower for many years because you were sensitive as well. Can you define what a way shower? I've been told I was a way shower as well, and a lot of women are way showers. What is a way shower?
Yeah, someone who is paving a path, not following one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Someone who's definitely on a path less traveled. That's a way shower. Someone who's a visionary, someone who marches to the beat of their own drum, someone
Mm-hmm.
who does not conform. There are a lot of us emerging right now, and I believe, that really is the person that I support mostly in my business. It's someone who is paving their own path, because as everyone I'm sure can see, what's happening in the world right now, how we've been doing things the last several thousand years hasn't been working so well.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are a lot of us right now being called to, and in the last few years that are waking up and being called to, like, our mission, our purpose, and the creations that we're being called to birth into the world. They are contributing to the new earth, to a
Mm-hmm.
new way of living and being, a more evolved way of existing. Like, so many of us have been taught to conform, lived in a society where we've been taught to conform. And that is a direct inversion. It's a direct contradiction to how we are wired
Mm-hmm.
at a soul level, to how we are wired as humans. We have free will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's time. It's
Yeah.
time.
And we've seen an attack on that in the last couple of years, especially. I mean, there's always been, but even more so in the last couple of years. Free will, no, you have to take this medicine or you have to do that. And you can't. We've seen it like
Yes.
explode with the way it's being done. So, but we have the opportunity with all these way showers to really change the way things, like whatever's being pumped up at nauseum through the news or whatever, it's programmed and it's on purpose to do those kind of things. So when women stand, and men as well, in sovereignty, aligned and working with earth, like you said, we create new earth. And that brings into another topic so interesting to me, is how quantum mechanics, quantum physics, we proved all this, but like how past, present, and future are all happening at the same time, and how there is no time. It just blows my mind. And we've heard a lot, especially recently, about changing timelines. We're not on the right timeline, or there's there's parallel realities happening at the same time, as they're as thin as a window. You can see it, but it's not going to affect you if you change your timeline. So can you explain a little bit about what a timeline is and how you can collapse space and time when you're working with a quantum, or how you can. I felt that this morning. I slept in longer. I looked at the clock. It was 6:30. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sleep a little longer. And boom, all of a sudden it's 7:30. I was like, what? Where did that time go? There's moments where I feel like time has sped up at certain points. And there's, of course, times when it's slow, when you're at the dentist office or something like that.
Yeah. So time in of itself is a third dimensional construct, and especially I love that you mentioned time speeding up. Like, many are feeling like time is speeding up and or like collapsing right now. And that's because their frequency is rising. As our frequency continues to rise to a higher vibrational level, we feel like time is collapsing. We feel like time is speeding up. And as far as collapsing space and time to manifest or to create, it really is about alignment. And this is more into divine creatorship. This is beyond just the law of attraction manifesting. this is I am that I am as a divine
Mm-hmm.
creator. This is aligning all of your bodies spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and ethereally to literally command in your reality in every cell, atom, and electron of your being. Like our electrons serve as multidimensional gateways. So it really is creating from that space. So in order to do that, to change timelines to higher dimensions, to collapse space and time, to call in what you desire, alignment is really key around that. And it's necessary to step beyond all of the constructs that you've known to be true.
And alignment, I was just looking. So, alignment, how would you describe alignment? Being aligned, I know there's, the heart, there's the mind and heart, there's coherency, there's just like your breath and just feeling grounded and like being of the world, being in the world, but not of the world. So, how would you describe alignment and how does someone begin aligning themselves? Or where is somebody in alignment? How do they get in alignment in order to collapse space and time?
Yeah. So a lot of where we run into challenges on our journey is that there's a gap that exists between our intellectual understanding of something and our ability to actually embody it.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a gap. What is that gap where they're just more in the mind and not believing the body can do
yes,
it? Or
exactly.
yeah.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
you have an intellectual understanding of, well, yeah, I know
Mm-hmm.
if I align all of my bodies, then yes, that creates my reality. But then
Mm-hmm.
someone may not necessarily take the actions that reinforce that reinforce creating that, right?
Got it.
So alignment is about not just understanding, it's also integrating,
Integrating
it's
it.
also embodying.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know you're in alignment? A simple way to know whether or not you're in alignment, it's really kind of two things. One, it's being acutely tapped into your soul's guidance, to your intuitive voice and how that comes through for you. Discerning between that and the ego mind, how they come through for you. And then also knowing what truth feels like in your body. And especially in the last few years, with all the propaganda and everything in the media and everything that's going on in the world, there's just a lot of BS, right? And so knowing what truth feels like for you is absolutely imperative to navigating your path forward. And so even people sometimes have challenges really anchoring into what truth feels like in your body, and everyone's experienced it. So you probably had a time in your life where you just knew something. You don't really know how you knew, or maybe you had a feeling, or maybe you got the chills, or maybe you saw something in your mind's eye, but you just knew. That's that feeling of truth, that just knowing. And so if you're tuned into your soul's guidance, to your soul voice, you're following that, you know what truth feels like for you, then falling into alignment is going to be a lot simpler and a lot easier.
And when you were talking about that, about in the mind and not integrating, it's the same thing as there's an I am statement. I am that I am. And you can hope, or you can believe, or you can pray, or all that. But there's a difference between that and knowing. And there's a difference between knowing and being. So you be that thing that which you seek, instead of like, because hope is like hoping it's something, because there's still not all that
Hope
faith.
indicates it
Yeah.
still might not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
faith, there's another thing about faith as well, because it's still kind of in the mind, because you're believing. There's faith, you do believe that something might happen, but when you know, you're in that completely other state of
Yeah.
creatorship, correct?
Right. You're knowing, and then yes, and then you're consciously choosing to be,
To
right?
be
To
it.
take actions, to show up in the world in alignment with that knowing.
Right. Okay. So they always talk about like manifesting, become that which you seek. You become it. And just like talk about I mean, even in the Bible, they talked about it. Jesus, when he said, oh, it was like knock and ask and you shall receive. I don't remember which one it is. I can't think of it in the moment, but it basically was, just about becoming that which you seek. You becoming, and they talk about attraction where you believe as if you already have it, which is so hard for the mind because, I have 500,000 bank account or whatever. And where is it? It's overcoming
right. But
that.
again, that goes back to how so much of what we've been taught is an inversion. It's a contradiction to how we're actually wired as creator beings, right? Because everything is created from our awareness, from our imagination. It's not the other way around. And that's where people have a really hard time because they've also been programmed to look outside themselves for the answers to everything. This gets into creatorship as well, because, our society is really, a lot of the constructs are set up around promoting keeping people on that hamster wheel of relying on an external source for their answers rather than taking true ownership of their power as a creator to literally call in to bring into physical form whatever it is that they want to create. I mean, like the financial industry is a perfect example of that because, credit rating systems and credit cards, right? And loans and just like all of the things that are out there, right? That essentially, which there can be good things, mortgages and stuff like that, right? But I'm just saying overall, like so many people even think of credit cards as real money. They're not. You can create whatever you need and whatever you want without constantly relying on someone else to tell you which direction to go. I just use money as an example because it is such a hot button for so many people.
And in mortgages, that just made me think of something else, just about how we are all slaves to the system. Well, I mean, we can choose not to be, because think about it. There's a good example. Okay, so we have a house and we get taxed. Okay, we already paid taxes on the house when we bought it. And then we're paying taxes as we're paying it off. And then we own it, but we're still paying taxes on it. So that really doesn't, you're paying taxes on something you already own outright. So there's a lot of that mind-blowing stuff that's actually happened when you open your eyes to see what is actually happening. But
that's just one example.
That's
right?
just one example.
Yeah.
When you find out what an upside down world we're in, it's like, what the hell?
It is.
And you go through the dark night of the soul. Like I went through that in Portland. I was like, what is going on? Before I was like, oh, it's fairy dust and angel. I'm not going to feed into that stuff. But then I woke up, I was like, what the hell is going on? And you had your own dark night of soul. It feels like people just have to have some kind of dark night of the soul. There's something that most people awaken to after they don't have to go into like alcoholic and face in the dust or get some horrible accident, almost die. But there's always that aha thing that kind of, oh, things aren't working this way, or that turns them into this path of, things just don't seem right at all. Or, something happens to change their soul's guiding them to do something else. And, the spiritual path, we always think it's a straight line. It's not even like up and down. It's a spiral. So can you explain the spiral? Because there's so much about a spiral. I know there's spiral in tarot, there's spiral in your learning, but I think in the quantum, doesn't it have something to do with the spiral? What is the significance of a spiral, or am I just off base?
Not in regard to the quantum. I mean, like the spiral is referred to a lot in that our journey is a spiral, right? Where it can be like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a constant kind of thing, a dance. I like to call it a dance,
that's a softer way of doing it instead of like, oh, I progressed. Yeah.
And there are less spirals with sustained alignment. I will say that. What happens a lot, we talked about intellectual understanding versus, knowing and being, right? Is that a lot of people will gain a knowledge of something, they hunger for this knowledge, but then they lack in the integration and embodiment of it. And so that causes more spirals on the journey, because what's happening is someone becomes aware of something, but then they're not reinforcing that new awareness with the behaviors and ways of living that are aligned with it. So then they fall back into that pattern. It's like a boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of spirals there.
Can you explain what role intention and visualization? Because visualization, we used to think, oh, that's a fantasy. It's a fantasy. But how important visualization plays in the process of creating a desired reality, and how can listeners effectively harness these tools?
Yeah, visualization is really important. That being said, not everyone can visualize really well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people will say, I can't really see that. And so you might be, just like everyone has their own learning style, everyone has their own style of creating their reality too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
intention is the all-encompassing though, right? Being clear in what it is that you desire and being intentional about that. You might be able to visualize that. What's most important is that you're really feeling it. You're really
Mm-hmm.
feeling it in all of your body and your being. And so in one of the ways that I work with clients, like if it's a new client, when we first started working together, the first kind of journey is really a future progression to step into that version of them who's already achieved whatever their goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And then using that actually as the roadmap with which to move forward to essentially fill in the gap to how do they then become her.
Mm-hmm.
So intention is super important.
So I know I've done like future self meditations. How would you walk someone through that in order to start embodying that future person that's going to start creating the life that they want, right?
Yeah, so I actually have a future progression that I
Mm-hmm.
share with my
Mm-hmm.
private clients, a
Mm-hmm.
journey that I take them through that helps them to anchor into that feeling. The feeling in your
Mm-hmm.
body is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I advise them to do is, what happens then is they now have an anchor that they can refer to as part of their daily practice every day,
Mm-hmm.
anchoring into what she feels like. What they're
Mm-hmm.
doing is literally changing their frequency
Mm-hmm.
every time that they do that. Right. And then when it comes to, whatever details come through for her during the journey of seeing and meeting and stepping into that future version of her, we then use that to prioritize whatever work we're doing together in our journey, right? And for some people, it could mean significant changes in relationships, a change in career, a change in how they're loving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really just, everyone's path is unique, but tapping into the feeling of her and meeting her, because she already exists
Mm-hmm.
just in a different dimension. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
just a matter of setting an intention to connect. Beyond that, I also work with my clients and do all of this in their Akashic records. We have our
Mm-hmm.
entire session in their Akashic records so that we're tapped directly into their records at a soul level, which also assists in collapsing space and time,
Mm-hmm.
essentially providing a much more direct path to literally changing at a cellular level to
Mm-hmm.
become a match to step
Mm-hmm.
into that timeline.
Can you explain the Akashic records and what the Akasha is?
Yes. So the
Mm-hmm.
Akashic records are essentially your soul records.
Mm-hmm.
They are the storehouse for information of all of your soul's experiences since the creation of your soul's existence. So all of your lifetimes, past lives, future self that we were just talking about, the information storehouse for all of your experiences in this
Mm-hmm.
current life, for your soul's purpose and mission, essentially everything. And so each and every person has their own Akashic records. It's just a matter of tapping into them to connect to them. We all have the answers within us. So there's tuning into your soul's guidance would be, we could say step one or phase one, right? But then when you connect with your records, you're taking that deeper. You're taking that deeper. You're taking it also to a higher dimension, and you're taking a more direct path to connecting with the true essence of who you really are. That's essentially what the Akashic records are. So you can gain guidance and information and clarity from your records. You can experience quantum leaps in your healing through the records. So I've had a client, one day I was having a session with her. She said, I think you just changed my whole life in 25 minutes.
Wow.
And it was an hour session. I've also had other clients say that, what we accomplished together in just a few sessions is literally like years and decades of work. And the reason for that is because when someone is ready to heal, or they're truly ready to change, then it can happen instantaneously. It can happen in one session. It's only ever our own resistance to change that causes our journey to feel more challenging, because we're misusing our free will and we're acting against the grain of who we really are. So whenever life feels like an uphill battle, that's why.
We're resisting it. And I know that people can have huge shifts really instantaneously when you connect to that field of all that is. Like we've seen it with Joe Dispenza's work, when like people that couldn't walk, all of a sudden they're walking, or they couldn't see, or diseases can go away just in a snap of a finger.
People recover from terminal cancer. I mean, miracles happen every day. And the common thing amongst all of those people that have experienced those miracles was their commitment and their willingness and their intention.
And it's also remembering, because we forget, and of course, what's being lambasted left and right, and how we've lost connection with each other through a lot of great things in the Western world, but we've lost connection to each other, and we've lost connection to the land, and we've lost connection to our cultures. But it's just how we've lost that connection with each other, and we've lost it in, I was just going to say, how we are all miracles. We forget that we are a miracle. Like it's just the infinitesimal chance that we got here with the sperm and the egg, and then we're all made up of stars. We're made up of everything. Like we are made up of stars. There's this great documentary. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. I usually don't watch these shows because I'm always afraid of animals getting hurt. So I'm like, I can't watch nature. They're going to, the gazelle, run from the lion, even though they need to eat. It's called Our Universe. And it's amazing. It's 6 episodes, and it shows just about how the stars, like it goes from an animal maybe in the Sahara, and how they're like living and seeking water, and how they're tied to the earth's energy. And then it goes into space, and about, how the universe was created. And then it goes back, and how they're still in these animals, and how turtles are just guided, like they swim but they're guided by like the energy that's in the water, or So, but people forget that we're miracles. And
we're literally part of nature, and we're part of the cosmos. You have the universe inside of you, the stars inside of you.
Yes. And that's what Jesus Christ talked about, whatever you believe in him, But as a teacher, he taught in his words, the kingdom of heaven is within. And if you really look at a lot of his teachings, are very Eastern in nature, and they're beautiful. I believe that, without getting too much in politics, a lot was taken out in order to control people and keep them in line and keep them in fear and all this. But his teachings are beautiful. The kingdom of heaven is within. Everything he's taught is like, we have the divine power because we are him. He is us, we are him. And here's what you're able to do once you align and tune in. He created miracles. So he's a great example of the miracles that you can create in your own life once you are aligned and once you know who you are. I
Yes.
am that I am. And that's what he was showing us, even though everything was bastardized after that. So, yeah. So the Akashic records, people accessing them, getting into
Everyone
alignment.
has them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much untapped power within
Mm-hmm.
us.
Yeah.
So much untapped.
Yep. A few more questions before we go, because we're getting close to the end of our time together. I want to know ascension. We hear a lot about that lately, especially on social media, the ascension process, and it's not necessarily rapture and all that. So the ascension, you're ascending, and we talk about like there's a planetary ascension right now. So how would you describe what is happening on our planet, and how would you describe ascension
Yeah. Well, that's a big question.
in a little nutshell?
So, I mean, I don't know that anyone would dispute that collectively that, a lot of the world looks like kind of a shit show right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's happening at a collective level is just as with our own journeys, our own personal journeys of ascension and our own dark nights of the soul, it's like we've been experiencing this planetary dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is happening right now. So it looks really bad, and there's a lot of really horrific things that are happening in the world right now. However, believe it or not, we are literally on the precipice of moving into a new dawn, of moving into the golden age, of moving into a new collective, more evolved way of living and being, of moving back into planetary balance. And you asked what ascension is, and this is connected to that. Ascension is balance.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier in our conversation, I briefly mentioned our different bodies and bringing our bodies into alignment. So emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, and ethereally, as an individual on your own ascension journey, seeking to bring those bodies into alignment. You can call that manifesting, collapsing space and time, alignment, a lot of different ways that we've talked about it today. That's really what it is. And in every our soul is eternal, but this body is here in this current lifetime on this physical plane, right? But the soul has lived many other lifetimes, and in every lifetime, which is all part of our ascension journey, we're presented with a purpose, with a mission. We're also presented with lessons and karma and unresolved things from other lives that our soul has lived. And we always have the free will to choose to learn those lessons, to master them, or to deny them. And they continue to kind of follow us until we do, not kind of, they do. And so, that all happens through misuse of free will, which could be a whole other conversation. But that's really what ascension is. It's the balance. And as you continue to bring yourself more and more back into balance, your frequency continues to rise more and more, creating the reality you desire. You collapse space and time. Things fall into place much more easily with much more synchronicity. The thing is that our purpose and mission, what God or source or whatever that higher power you believe in has brought you here to do or created you to do, is also synonymous with what lights you up and what brings you the most joy. So although cliche, all of the quotes out there about following your joy are absolutely true. And we kind of become immune to hearing that so much, but it's all true if you just follow your joy.
Because joy, everything's frequency and vibration, and at a
Yes.
cellular, at all levels. So following that joy is like the top of like happy, and then there's joy. That's just a state of being, and your body resonates. You resonate at a certain resonates outward. So that is like where creation can happen. It's joy. So yeah, it's
Because
just
you're open, right?
yeah,
Your
you're
electrons,
open.
your body, your muscles, you're all open. When you are in constriction, which fear promotes constriction, is when you're in resistance.
So you're just so closed off.
Exactly. You're repelling, whatever it is that you desire. So yes, being in that high vibe state, it opens you up. Being in a space of true love opens you.
And I've heard that we're in a frequency war right now. It's war on consciousness. Like, and what you said about, yeah, there's a lot of craziness going up, but the old structures have to collapse. They have to go away. So it's like they're going out kicking and screaming, but there is this whole planetary ascension to this beautiful new earth. And that's what I choose. I don't want all the stuff that's coming out. I don't align with it.
That's what's happening, right? We have to choose. Each and every one of us with our free will has to choose.
Yep. So
it doesn't just drop in our lap and change. Like, we have to intentionally choose it.
So free will and choice and raising your vibration and raising your frequency. So yeah, because we're beautiful creator beings. And this has been a wonderful conversation. I would love for my audience to know how to work with you. Where's the best way to get in touch with you? Do you have any retreats or new projects, or what do you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to go would be my website, which is jenniferspor.com. So it's just JENNIFERSPOR.com. And I have everything that I'm up to there. And if someone wants to join my email community to stay in the loop on what I'm up to, they can do that through my website as well. I also have my own podcast, and I have free guided meditations.
And what is that podcast again?
It's Path of the Awakened Heart. So there's all kinds of goodies over there for everyone to learn more about me or connect with me if they want to go deeper.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this amazing stuff. Like, that's so inspirational, because it's something that we all are, and that we have access, and we have the power. We have the power.
Yes,
the power. Like,
the power.
Who is it that said it? Glenda the Good Witch. The power is, you've always had the power.
Yes, it's always been within you. It's always been home. And Dorothy talks about home. Yes. Home is where the heart is.
And it's funny now, because I had always heard people talking about the Wizard of Oz, and how, how it has that whole story behind it, just like the Matrix. Yeah. Just like the Matrix. When I watched the Matrix, I didn't really understand. Now I understand what they're trying to talk about. They're always showing us.
Another one is the never ending story.
Yes. I haven't watched that in so long. I'll have to rewatch that one.
Yes. It's one of my favorites.
But it's funny now, because I watch a lot of shows and I'm like, oh my God, that's what they're doing right now. They're sharing us in advance. Like, oh my God, that's happening right now. Yes. So it's crazy. But so one more question before we go, and you probably heard it since you listened to one of my episodes. What does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Yes. To live from truth, to live from love, and to live from my inner knowing, to live soul-led, truly.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I have truly enjoyed this conversation, Jennifer. And everybody that's listening, you need to go check her out and, just follow your beautiful new path. And we're all beautiful creator beings, and check out Jennifer and her work and get involved in some of her programs. But thank you for tuning in today. And thank you, Jennifer. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Yeah. It's still early for you. You're 3 hours. Yeah. 3 hours. So you got a lovely afternoon. Enjoy your afternoon. I'm going to go off into my evening before it gets dark very soon. So, okay. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenedheartpodcast.com.